Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, April 6, 2017, and we're only barely ready to go here. What a morning it's been. The usual drama here in the household. I don't know what it is, but who cares about this? I don't know. Everything went wrong today once again. Nothing broke, but we did, in fact, it was quite a struggle to make it to the microphone. Almost, kind of, sort of on time. We're a few seconds behind schedule, but there are more important things to catch up on. It is day 2 of Greg Dworkin's exciting new microphone in usage. I got a lot of good reviews. We heard a lot of nice comments. Everybody said it sounded really pretty good. You know, it's a little bit difficult to tell over the headphones and Skype. Everything kind of sounds more or less the same. But I think the big difference is that I used to have better sound in my headphones for his old mic than people got over the air from his old mic. And then there just wasn't that much room for improvement. But I'm pretty sure that the brand new microphone sounds fantastic. Everyone who listened to the live stream and to the podcast said it made a huge difference. So excellent. That's good news. Today being Thursday of the last week before the spring/Easter/Passover/anything else that I don't know about break in Congress. I guess today is the day when I guess we may see the nuclear option invoked today. We'll find out once and for all whether McConnell has got the votes for this for the Gorsuch nomination. I haven't checked the schedule today because, I'm pretty resigned to the whole thing happening, and I have been paying attention elsewhere. For instance, apparently yesterday there was the release of the transcript of the big interview, the big exclusive interview that Donald Trump gave to the failing New York Times, which he totally hates and is totally fake news. But, when he needs exposure, of course, it's time to give a interview request to the New York Times. And I guess who was there? Glenn Thrush, and is it Maggie Haberman who was there? And we'll catch up on that. And of course, they put out the transcript or a lightly edited transcript of the interview yesterday, and I got a quick look at it. I didn't even bother putting it aside. I'm sure we'll talk about it with Greg, no doubt, and everyone was astonished at how easily Donald Trump lies and exaggerates. For instance, and this is really interesting. I'd love to get to the bottom of this one. I'm not sure why he would fabricate this, but I have less reason to believe that the person involved would actually have said it. He said that he visited with Elijah Cummings at some point, and that Elijah Cummings told him that he would go down as one of the great presidents in this country's history. And then he was all upset because he saw Elijah Cummings go on television and say something bad about him. And how could this be? I don't know. I'd love to know what the kernel of truth, if any, in that story is. I mean, others have speculated that, Elijah Cummings came and told you were going down as president in this country. That's a possibility. We also will have to catch up on the news of Stephen K. Bannon, international man of mystery and now ex-principal of the National Security Council, although plenty of speculation that it won't change anything, that it's a change in sort of title for him, but that he will, I saw reported today that he would continue to attend National Security Council meetings and was even scheduled to do so, I think, today. Now that stands in some contrast to the reporting yesterday. One, that he was pushed out, and two, that it didn't matter that he was pushed out because he wasn't going to those meetings anyway. There's a very stupid period immediately following the break in that news that he had been removed, which means that the president signed another executive order at some point taking him out. Remember, we just discussed, I think just the other day, that the president purported to have been surprised by the addition of Bannon to the National Security Council in the first place because he didn't read the executive orders that Bannon no doubt wrote and handed to him. So somebody else found the parchment and, the folders that they put the executive orders in and fixed that one right quick. And then I don't know who would have put this spin out, but they had to come up with something quick. And so Bannon's spin on it, or the one he appeared to want out there, was, well, one, I don't even care because I didn't go to those meetings anyway because you're so stupid. I'm so busy. I'm busy running the country. I don't have time to go to the National Security Council. And anyway, I was only there. This is the great one. I was only really there to keep an eye on Mike Flynn, because we all knew there was something wrong with that Flynn guy. Well, we put him on a National Security Council anyway and made him a National Security Advisor and gave him a security clearance. And, we figured, give him another chance. He's only been caught or implicated in schemes that would indicate espionage activity once or twice before, like installing the internet connection in his non-internet connected, by rule, Pentagon office when he was at the Defense Intelligence Agency, but whatever. They knew there was something wrong with this guy, but they just put him there anyway, and they figured Bannon would be a good minder. He'll monitor his activity. Now, how he was going to do that, I have no idea, because they also reported, well, it's not a big deal that he was pushed off the National Security Council as a principal, because he wasn't going to those meetings anyway. Good monitoring, by the way, great technique. If you're going to monitor what the National Security Advisor is doing in the National Security Council, one excellent way to do it is not to go to any of the meetings and just be like, whatever, I'm monitoring it. So none of that lines up. Anyway, people insist this morning that it might be just a removal in name only and might be to satisfy the people who were upset about his being named to the council. I don't know who those people are. I mean, everyone was upset about that. What I mean is I don't know who it would be that Trump would care is upset. I don't know who he listens to. I'm not sure how those things happen. Anyway, we'll catch up on that. We'll catch up on more Russian spy stories. And a big reminder, in New York Magazine from Ed Kilgore, a favorite of Armando's, about April 28th and what it could mean. And it could mean so much more than we were warned about, or we've been keeping an eye on with Joan, the potential for a government shutdown. An answer to a question that Joan and I have had for some time. When does the deadline fall? When can we expect to see a halt in Congressional Review Act activity? Because, of course, that's aimed only at giving them a filibuster-proof way of repealing regulations passed in the last 60 days or so of the previous administration, or the last 60 days, whether there's a previous administration or not. And we weren't sure how they were counting those days. As it turns out, Ed Kilgore says April 28th is not only shutdown day, if it comes to that, but it's the end of the road for Congressional Review Act. So they're taking the week or so, taking next week off. Then they got to deal with continuing resolution, or however they're going to fix the spending. They may be done with that activity. That may be the last bills we see pass Congress until Mitch McConnell finally realizes that he's going to have to use the nuclear option on legislative filibusters as well, if he cares to pass anything. So, with all of that looming in the background, let's catch up with today's headlines. Greg Dworkin and his fabulous microphone are here. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning.
Wow. It's like you're speaking into
It's
a
like
microphone.
I have a new microphone.
Yeah. It's like
So
you're
part,
in a room.
part of it didn't work the way I had intended,
Oh.
by the way. I still have some work to do here. The boom is up on my desk.
Yes.
I got the shock piece here.
Yes, right. Shock mount, they call it. That's the big
Shock mount. What that does is
tiny
that
looking
it gives a little play to it so the microphone can hang. And if you're typing or if you're using your mouse, the vibrations won't set off the microphone. That's the purpose of that.
Supposedly. We'll see.
So
Okay.
all of that is set up except for actually attaching the mic. And here's why. I have, on the advice of somebody I know, I got a Blue Yeti microphone, which is wonderful.
Oh, they are good.
But apparently Blue Yeti microphones have had a manufacturing issue in which a random number of some of them have the wrong size screw hole at the bottom.
What'd you say? All right.
It's slightly bigger than normal. So when you try to screw it into the shock mount or to the boom, it doesn't fit.
It doesn't even fit in the shock mount, huh?
Yeah. Well, the shock mount and the boom are the same size.
Aha.
So the thing, I couldn't put my mic onto the boom for the same reason I couldn't put it onto the shock mount. This is a known issue.
Good.
When you go to the shock mount site, it says, if you're having trouble with your microphone, click here. And you click here and it takes you to this page that says, sorry about all of this. Apparently there's a manufacturing issue. You can fix it with some plumber's tape.
What?
You can take some plumber's tape and wind it around the screw and it'll fit better. And if that doesn't work, we'll refund your shock mount. It's not our fault. Sorry.
Huh.
So what I did is I ordered a new microphone, hoping that the new one will be the right size.
Oh.
And they make it in black, which I have because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Silver.
Right.
So I ordered a silver one just
Okay.
because that way I can tell them apart.
Ah.
So I could tell which one is which. And we'll see
Yes.
if that works. And then I'll return the black one and everything will be cool.
Okay. Well, I guess that will work. That's a weird problem. We just used the wrong size, whatever, machine drill. Okay.
Yeah. But apparently it's a no
miraculous-
problem. So
Well, I guess so. I wish I had known about it because I said, oh, well, maybe getting the shock mount. Well, or at least I said, I know mine is mounted through a shock mount. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I guess not. What does it stand for?
but it's still a good
reason
idea.
size would be
So I have that too. And that's
Sure.
cool.
Yeah, it makes it look real super professional and everything.
It does.
Armando says you sound great. We'll have to get Armando another one of these. I think he had one at one point, and but he just he's rarely.
Armando likes to call from the car, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
help.
So we got to get Joan one of these next. And how about we should just raffle them off for random listeners, and then just say, now that you have such a great mic, you
Hey,
should
speaking
call.
of which, I have a great story for Armando this morning.
All right.
It's a satire piece by Alexandra Petri from the Washington Post.
Oh.
And it's called Every Story I Have Read About Trump Supporters in the Past Week. It's actually very funny.
I have a good guess about what. All right, let's hear
Right,
it.
so she says, listen, since Donald Trump's approval rating now looks like something that got stuck to the bottom of my shoe, I joined the flood of journalists who went to Real America to gloat. To see how the Trump supporters are getting along. Right? So she picks a routine, average, everyday Trump supporter to interview.
Sure.
Okay. She says, in the shadow of the old flag factory, Craig Slabornik sits whittling away on a rusty nail, his only hobby since the plant shut down. He's an American like millions of Americans, and he has no regrets about pulling the lever for Donald Trump in November, twice in fact, which Craig says is just more evidence of the voter fraud plaguing this country.
This is
It's really very funny. Each morning he arrives at the Blue Plate Diner and tries to make sense of it all. The regulars are already there. There's Lydia Borkle, who lives in an old shoe in the tiny town of Temp Work Only, Arizona. It's Tempe, T-E-M-P-E. Tempe Work Only, Arizona, where the factory has just rusted away into a pile of gears and dust. The job was replaced by robots, not shipped overseas, but try telling Lydia that. I did, very slowly, I thought, but she still became quite brusque. Her one lifeline was an Obama-era jobs training program, but she says she doesn't regret her vote for Trump and likes what he says about business. She makes a point of telling me that she's not a racist, but I think she is a little, probably. Pretty funny stuff.
That's nice. Okay.
So you get a better idea of this sort of thing. Then there's Linda Blarnick, like the rusty hubcaps hanging on the wall behind her. She was made in America 50 years ago. Back when this town actually made things, a time she still remembers fondly. She says she has just enough of the coastal elitist media who keep showing up to write mean things about my town and my life. Mournfully, a whistle blows behind her, the whistle of a train that doesn't stop in this America any longer. Linda's sister, Carla Blarnick, is married to an undocumented immigrant but voted for Trump, who was vowed to increase deportations. Asked to explain this contradiction, she says, well, don't tell Bert this, but I have been trying to find an unobtrusive way to break up the marriage for years, and this seemed like the loophole I was waiting for.
Finally.
So, you get an idea what's going on here.
Yes.
And you know what? It's just as insightful as any of the other articles you read about what's going on in Trump country, where here we are trying to put together yet again a different version of the healthcare fiasco. And how is that going to go down? Before we get to that, though, a couple of interesting things here. I have some quickies. For example, this one, also in the Washington Post, apparently. Kentucky Coal Mining Museum in Harlan County is switching to solar power.
Okay.
Right?
Well done.
Because it's cheaper. I mean, they said, sorry, but, you got to do what you got to do.
All right. Well, it's a good decision.
Right? We have here the AP NORC poll in ORC. Most Americans oppose funding the border wall. The public opposes new spending for the wall 58 to 28. Nearly half say they strongly oppose funding for the project. So the thing is, and we talked about this, I think, on the show the other day with a Greg Sargent piece that had the fantastic title. I forget exactly what it said, but it was along the lines of Trump's agenda is failing because everybody hates it and it's a bunch of lies.
Right.
Right. So there's an example. This is a quick correction.
Okay.
From Politico.
Oh.
Right? Politico's fun to read sometimes for stuff like this. It says, a correction for the ages. Because of an editing error, an earlier version of this article misidentified Ivanka Trump as President Trump's wife. His wife is Melania. Ivanka is one of his daughters. And then it goes on to say, and I'm quoting here, I mean, it's not that unreasonable a slip. Which I thought was pretty funny.
Well, she's sort of acting first lady.
She is.
So why not?
All right. And I just thought I'd mention, just for housekeeping purposes, that I tweeted something yesterday which turns out to be all-time favorite for people who are retweeting and liking and stuff.
Yeah.
It's got over 1,000 likes. It says, you can always count on McCain to not do the right thing and then complain about it to the press.
That was true.
And so, just making a milestone note here. Yes, I have a new microphone, but I also have a new tweet.
Okay. Everybody go check the new tweet.
Everybody go check the new tweet. It's really shiny. The tweet came in both black and silver, but I elected to get the black one.
Elijah Cummings says it will go down as one of the great tweets in the history of our country.
The thing that I read about Elijah Cummings somewhere, probably on Twitter, is that what he actually said is, you'll go down as history as one of the great presidents if you stop being divisive and if you stop doing hateful things and if you get your act together. And Trump heard the first part, but not the second part.
There's not that many presidents in our history, so I guess it's possible.
Well, to me that was typical politician. You have to flatter the guy to make him even listen. So you get flattered in the first part of the sentence, hoping your attention span will last long enough to at least hear the second part of the sentence.
I guess
we're not talking paragraphs here. Just a sentence. Just pay attention long enough to get to the end of this sentence, please. And even that was kind of dicey.
What'd you say at the end there? I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't listening. So anyway, let's turn to healthcare here. This is Sarah Cliff.
Hi, Sarah.
Recently got married and back from honeymoon, and that's good because she's a great health reporter. She's over at Vox. And her headline is, The Pottery Barn Theory of Obamacare. You break it, you buy it. If the law implodes, it won't work in Republicans' favor. And this is from a recent Kaiser Family Foundation health poll. They do this monthly. And it says, most voters say it will be GOP's fault if Obamacare doesn't work. Question is, as you may know, the 2010 healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, remains the law of the land. What comes closer to your view? President Trump and Republicans in Congress are now in control of the government and they're responsible for any problems with it moving forward. 61% say yes. Mm-hmm. President Obama and Democrats in Congress passed the law and they're responsible for any problems with it going forward. 31% say yes. That's good to know because that means 31% is essentially his base. 31% of the country will believe anything that they are told. And these are probably the Fox News watchers.
Almost certainly.
Right? And then, but 61% feel otherwise, and that's, really the whole point about it. It's very nice that Trump voters think this or that the base thinks that or Fox News says this or that. What really matters is the 61, not the 31. And then there's the 7%. Other, don't know, or refused, include people that say neither or somebody else is responsible, or both are equally responsible, or I really don't have a clue what you're talking about. What's healthcare? So those 7% perhaps are persuadable. It's just a question of who talked to them last.
Mm-hmm. Like the president.
And speaking of polls, Steve Casala has a piece here in Commonwealth magazine, which looks like something that might be published in Massachusetts. Repeal challenge, Republicans love Obamacare. GOP leaders contend with the politics of poll numbers. He points out that Republicans appear to be, and that's, I think, the right way to phrase it, appear to be preparing another run at repealing and replacing Affordable Care Act. That's assuming that the Freedom Caucus gets everything they want, which will make everybody else hate it. And therefore, it's not really clear that the rest of the Republican Congress will go along. But the New York Times reported Tuesday that a new version of the wildly unpopular American Health Care Act may be in the works. The initial bill was pulled last month after it lost support on both the right and the left. The last poll before the Republican bill went off light support showed about 70% of voters supported the proposal. Okay.
What's that? What?
And if the new bill is anything like what the Times report suggests, it may be just as much of a political loser. And I would add, if not more, because they're making it worse. And that's because Steve says Republicans love Obamacare. He's a pollster, by the way. Ah. They like being able to keep young people on their parents' insurance, 82%. They like prohibiting denials due to pre-existing conditions at 63%. And as I understand it, it's not that the new bill that the Freedom Caucus is going for is going to get rid of pre-existing conditions. They're just going to get rid of paying for them. In other words, sick people have to pay their own way. And so, sure, you have a pre-existing condition and they can't deny you insurance, but they could charge you $1 gazillion a month and nobody can do anything about it. So they like the healthcare exchange, 72%, and they even like the Medicaid expansion, 67%. And a November poll from the Kaiser Family Foundation foreshadowed the deeply problematic politics of repeal, finding only 60% support among Republicans for all but two of Obamacare's key provisions. And the only thing people didn't like is the mandate. Nobody likes the mandate, like nobody likes taxes, which is really immaterial whether you like it or not. And the other is requires employers with 50 or more employees to pay a fine if they don't offer health insurance. So small businesses didn't like that maybe you have 40 or 55 employees, and then you would have to pay a fine if you don't offer health care for your 55 employees. People didn't like that.
No.
And this is Republicans we're talking about, and that was 45% okay with it. So for the most part, what he's talking about is that, even Republicans find it pretty acceptable. And then let's look at the alternative. Ariel Edwards-Levy in a tweet summed up reactions to the Affordable Health Care Act from the Democracy Corps focus group recently. And let me just read you some reactions. I did send this as a picture, but I also sent the link. Okay. Reactions to the Affordable Health Care Act plan. And I'm just going to read you the actual reactions and then a little description of who's saying it. It's terrible. White, non-college woman, Akron, Ohio, I presume. It doesn't look very good at all. White, unmarried woman, 45 plus, Akron. It's not any better than what we had. White, unmarried women, less than 45, Cleveland. It sounds crazy. Obamacare is bad and this is bad. It's not doing anybody any good. Ouch. I think it's ridiculous. It's all bad. It's scary, crazy. There's no benefit in switching. It's not accomplishing anything. This is scary. I think it raises a lot of questions. I don't even know what to think of it. It's scary and unsettling. So obviously you had all those positive reactions to hearing about what was in the bill. And then they want to go and they want to make it worse.
That sounds like a good plan.
Right. And here's some other ones, which I also thought was interesting. One said, why would you do this to America? Mm-hmm. And the other one said, what sense does this make? It's not going to help people. It's not going to help the middle class. It's not going to help someone whose son is diabetic or whose mom has cancer. It makes no sense whatsoever. And then I knew it was bad. This is horrible. There's nothing good on here. There's nothing to benefit anybody except wealthy Republicans. And according to the focus group, they were most upset that the Trump-Ryan plan would hurt seniors and the disabled. And reading it actually made them literally shake their heads as opposed to seriously shake their heads. Mm. They were also shocked that premiums would go up by 15 to 20%. One woman nearly crying said, if I have to pay another $1 to my premium, I might shoot someone. She should move to Florida because then it's legal to shoot people.
Yes. Well, if you're in Florida, this is good advice. If you shoot your insurance company people who are very definitely a threat to your life, I think you can get away with it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, so everybody, there's a new growth industry. We'll move you to Florida. I'll help you.
Right. So Miriam,
Your
to
couch.
change the subject a little bit here, points out on Twitter, we know Bannon still has his security clearance and goes to work in the same office each day, and today's the same as yesterday, and that is absolutely true. I had this really interesting, in a weird way, piece from Chris Eliza at CNN, where he's now the CNN editor at large. He's moved there from the Washington Post,
Oh, yes, right.
thereby making the Post better. What Steve Bannon's demotion tells us about the Trump White House.
Demotion. He didn't need to be there. All right.
And basically, if you read it, you won't learn anything that you didn't already know. But it's an interesting read for those who like to read about the intrigue that's going on in the Vatican or Kremlinology in terms of who's standing next to Putin at the moment and who's, missing because maybe they just got killed. Or maybe you like to read about the royals over, in England. If you like that kind of piece, you'll like this kind of piece. It doesn't really tell us anything.
Role
But
models.
what I'm seeing, which is very interesting, is people like Mike Flynn Jr. tweeting stuff like, I don't understand what's going on in the White House over there. The two most loyal people to Trump are Steve Bannon and my father.
Yep.
And without them, this is like, Goldman Sachs is doing a coup and taking over and that sort of thing.
Yes.
It's all Jared Kushner's fault.
Steve Bannon, Goldman Sachs guy. Okay.
So, you scratch your head and say, none of this makes any sense. What does it really mean that Bannon's not there? He shouldn't have been there in the first place, and this seems like an automatic correction. I'm guessing that McMaster just had enough and didn't want any more of this. I don't know that it has any other significance because Miriam's right. As long as Bannon is still in the White House, still has his office, and still has his security clearance, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
It's not even like they use cabinet members, experts, intel, the intelligence community. The only thing they ever do is talk to Bannon, talk to Kushner, talk to Ivanka, the First Lady,
Yes.
and then decide what they want. So what difference does it make?
gut. And Bannon has one of the biggest guts going in the White House, so they can't get rid of him anytime soon.
Here's another interesting one, just because interesting things happen. And this also was in Politico. Josh Gerstein was reporting. And I sent you some pictures, which are at the very, very, very end of the Skype list that I sent you today.
Okay.
All right. And there's two pictures. One is Trump sort of, pointing to his buddy, Chris Kobach, as they talk about immigration issues. Trump is standing in front of a door, and he's got his finger pointing with a big smile on his face. And Kobach is standing there with a bunch of papers under his arms.
Yeah.
Then they have a close-up
Oh, yes.
of the
I remember
papers.
this. Yeah.
Right? And the close-up apparently says this is a Department of Homeland Security memo that Kobach is giving to Trump as unofficial advisor about stuff like the Muslim ban and how all this stuff is going to happen.
Yeah.
So the title of the article is Trump Immigration Advisor Ordered to Turn Over Briefing Document. A federal magistrate has ordered one of President Donald Trump's key campaign advisors on immigration to turn over a document he used to brief the president-elect during the transition. Magistrate Judge James O'Hara issued an order Wednesday requiring Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach to give Kobach?
I think with Kobach.
Yeah, to give the court a copy of the memo. It's Kobach and Gorsuch then, not Kobach and Gorsuch. And Nunez, right? To give the court a copy of the memo he took into a meeting with Trump at the president's Bedminster, New Jersey golf club last November, because all meetings happen at golf clubs. The meeting was private, but a portion of the front page of the document titled Department of Homeland Security, Kobach's Strategic Plan for First 365 Days was captured by press photographers as Trump and Kobach posed for pictures. Images of the document showed that it included proposals for registration of citizens of high-risk countries, extreme vetting of foreign visitors, a ban on Syrian refugees, deporting aliens charged with crimes, apparently without regard to whether they've been convicted, and building a border wall with Mexico. At the time of the meeting, Kobach, a well-known immigration hawk, was being widely discussed for nomination or appointment to a top Trump administration post. No such assignment has materialized. O'Hara has it rude that Kobach must turn the document over, The plaintiffs in a lawsuit challenging Kansas's proof of citizenship requirements for those registering to vote. But for now, the magistrate is requiring that the memo be produced to the court for in-camera review. In-camera review.
Yes.
Does that mean that they're looking at the camera picture that they took? And
It doesn't. It's essentially private review by the judge only in chambers, not in open court, and not necessarily with anybody else there.
So Kobach claims that the photograph document is protected by executive privilege, except it's out there in the public and anybody can see it, and you just did.
Harvard genius lawyer, by the way, Chris Kobach, who exposed that memo to the photographers. And then, of course, it's a great claim, too. Oh, yeah, it's privileged.
It's privileged. You can't see what I have in my hand that everybody in the world can see.
Okay, Mr. Genius.
Right? This goes along with, what was it, when they had the nuclear keys and the other stuff on full display?
Yes.
During some of their sessions, and they've had other documents that are supposed to be secret on display as part of some of their photo op sessions.
Yeah, definitely goes way back with Republicans. They have no idea about what they call operational security, it turns out. It used to happen all the time when Republican members would make, press junkets to Iraq, and then they would take selfies and tweet the pictures of themselves that would reveal their position inside the compound in the green zone, and everybody would go crazy like that. You just actually helped them target mortar fire, you dummy. What's wrong with you? Oh,
right, it's like, Geraldo Rivera, on the ground with a stick showing everybody where the positions were.
Right. Well, I appreciate their interest in sharing information with people. I remember this photo of Kobach. I'm amazed that something came of it. After all, and as you point out, he's got not only the papers in his hands, but he's got a leather binder in his hands too. It's really just a matter of if he had put that inside there, none of this happens.
Well, they're lazy.
They are, and they're dumb.
So, my last piece here is just, kind of passing interest. It's Jonathan Chait writing in New York Magazine. And the title is, "Before this is over, Republicans are going to wish Hillary Clinton won." And the reason they say that is basically what Jonathan is writing here. He goes through all the things that Trump promised.
Yes.
That can't possibly happen. Healthcare being the most acute of them.
It's going to be beautiful.
But with all of them.
Yeah.
Basically, Trump said, it doesn't matter how difficult these things are. We'll do it. He writes, it's by no means unique, healthcare there. He says Trump won the presidency by running a campaign that went far beyond the usual sunshine every president sells on the campaign trail. His populist vision collapsed every policy dilemma into a simple question of negotiating skill that he could solve easily and painlessly. And I would add he alone.
Right.
I alone can do this for you.
I remember that.
Right. Trump has few clear paths to bolster his popularity while holding together his partisan base. Building the wall will be difficult, time-consuming. Renegotiating NAFTA is impossible, probably. Republican standbys like cutting taxes for the rich and loosening regulation on Wall Street aren't all that popular. In fact, they're deeply unpopular. And they're also easily reversible. And then he points out Trump mortgaged everything to win the election by making promises that he lacked any remotely practical plan to fulfill. The gains for him and his party will be scant, and the political costs of obtaining them very high. And partly of interest to me because of that is something that happened yesterday. It's always annoying to me, always, when the press decides they really do want to act just like solicit and courtiers. That after months of Trump being completely incompetent, screwing things up, and basically, showing no capacity whatsoever to govern, because basically the government is being run by Jared and Ivanka. And that's not an exaggeration. So then we get into, and we are still unfortunately in very difficult waters in terms of what's happening internationally.
Yes.
Right now we have two crises on the immediate horizon, North Korea and also with Syria.
Yeah.
We have Syrian sarin gas being used. And yesterday Trump says, it's my responsibility now, after a day where he blamed everything on Obama, which was absolutely absurd and disgusting. And then he says, no, it's all my responsibility now. And Syria crossed a lot of lines for me, and now I don't like Assad anymore. So he says this yesterday, and the entire press corps treats this as if it's the long-awaited pivot.
I guess that's going to happen, okay.
Right? And so, he's getting serious, so this is important, this is big, this is this is that. It means nothing. It's Trump talking. He's the same Trump that always says stuff and then forgets about what he said 5 minutes later, folks. But what's interesting is this article in CNN, which I will read the title to you, and you get the sense here. Russia challenges Trump to say what he would do about Syria. And I read this and said, why is it that Russia is asking more probing and better questions than the press corps? Why aren't they asking Trump that? Why are they accepting at face value that Trump said something, therefore it's meaningful? Why? Why after all this time?
I don't know. They're used to doing it for other presidents, but
I know. They treat, it's exactly right. They treat the White House as if this is what you're supposed to do. With this president, that is exactly what you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to take any of this at face value. You're supposed to assume he doesn't have a plan until he proves to you he does, because that's how he's operated up until this time.
Right.
If he lies every day, assume he's lying. I don't know why this is so difficult for people.
I don't know. Although I did notice that everybody sort of, I don't know, in some contexts they do assume this. Like, for instance, I don't know anybody who assumed that the story about Elijah Cummings was true. They just said, well, what really happened here?
Right.
Or
it can't be the entire
Bannon
story. Maybe he said part of that. Maybe he didn't say any of that. Maybe he thinks they all look alike and it was somebody else. Who knows? You just don't know with him.
Right.
But why would you assume at face value anything, and especially about something that might get us into war?
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
I don't know why you would. Here's some interesting, I guess, breaking news. I don't have a link. It just says that CNN is reporting it. House Intel Chair Devin Nunes will temporarily step aside in the Russia investigation, which I guess goes hand in hand with the Steve Bannon thing being
Really?
pushed aside, maybe, sort of. But that's what it says. And Christina Wilkie is reporting that CNN is reporting it, but I don't know whether that's what they just said on the air and there's no article yet or what. So, all right, that's good-ish. I mean, as it happens, I checked into this on the internets. I looked at the webs, and that committee is full of Republicans. There's just no end to how many they've got there. There's some Democrats there too, but as it turns out, Republicans are allowed to have more than Democrats are allowed.
Let me read you a statement which I just found. Jamie Dupre is reporting this.
Okay.
Jamie Dupre covers Congress in D.C. for WSB Atlanta and is one of the people I follow for various and sundry reasons. And here is the statement. House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes today issued the following statement. Several left-wing activist groups
it's our fault. Yay.
have filed accusations against me with the Office of Congressional Ethics.
This is true.
The charges are entirely false and politically motivated and are being leveled just as the American people are beginning to learn the truth about the improper unmasking of the identities of U.S. citizens and other abuses of power. Despite the baselessness of the charges, I believe it is in the best interest of the House Intelligence Committee and the Congress for me to have Representative Mike Conaway, with assistance from Trey Gowdy and Tom Rooney, temporarily take charge of the committee's Russia investigation while the House Ethics Committee looks into this matter. I will continue to fulfill all my other responsibilities as committee chairman, and I'm requesting to speak to the Ethics Committee at the earliest possible opportunity in order to expedite the dismissal of these false claims. That's
a
the
very
statement.
long statement.
So it's your fault.
Yes.
Because you're left-wing. I'm not.
Mr.
I'm a centrist.
Nunes, that is a intelligent, lucid, well-thought-out objection.
Which was apparently written by a committee, and therefore very appropriate for the Intelligence Committee.
Yeah. Well, it's the smartest thing I've seen a Republican say or do in a year.
But wait a minute. What does Paul Ryan say about this? Ryan said there's no reason for him to do this.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Go ahead and say that. I'm sure he did do that, and that statement is no longer operative.
Yeah. So clearly Nunes is incompetent and they want Trey Gowdy running it.
Yes. That lunatic.
Or am I missing something here?
No. I mean, I guess it would. Well, I guess Mike Conaway will help. I don't know anything about Mike Conaway, but.
The House Intelligence Committee has, in their Russia probe, decided to go back and look at Benghazi.
Yeah, basically. Okay, sure. Well, good. I'm glad he had to do that. He should have to do that. It was requested from the beginning. He wouldn't.
It was
comply,
pretty
so
obvious
forced
after
his
he
hand.
got busted and caught at the White House that this was going to happen. It was just a question of time.
Yeah, although I actually did entertain the possibility that he just simply would not ever do it, just like we never saw Trump's taxes and he's not divesting.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it is another piece of information here that I would pass along with an observation that because Trump essentially has an emotional bond with his nutty voters, there are things he can do and get away with that other Republicans cannot do and get away with, even though they think they can.
That's true.
And when they try to do it and fail, it's always of interest and hardly a surprise. Now, Trump's going to get caught eventually, but for now, as far as his base is concerned, he can do no wrong. But that does not translate to other Republicans, and that's one of the reasons why they're in such big trouble on this healthcare thing. And with that, I will leave you for this morning. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend Kagro in the morning, David Waldman. And it's Thursday, and I won't be here Friday, but I'll be back Monday. By then, maybe I'll have my new microphone and the boom setup all figured out. But if not, this desk situation is working out just fine. I have a desk set up for it.
That's good. It sounds good, and I hope you'll find a proper placement for it, and the boom will work, and you'll get the right size thing. And oh my goodness, what a well, I'm sorry you had such a headache with it because it sounds good.
It's just kind of fun, actually. I like working out some of this sort of stuff.
Oh, okay.
And the bottom line is it sounds better.
Then. Okay. Yes, that's right. It does sound good, and everybody appreciates it, and you've inspired Joan. I think we're going to have to get Joan hooked up with one of these, too.
Oh, well, if she wants, she can have my old mic. It's the one where the hole isn't quite right.
I don't know. I was thinking, you should don't send it back. Send it to, but then I realized, you're sending her one that she won't be able to set up. So.
You don't have to have a boom.
That's
it's
true.
Just, it's just one of those fun things that I thought would be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think it makes it, it's more convenient. So we'll get her the best setup we can get her. And, what's wrong with you guys at Blue Yeti microphones?
Fix this.
I mean, they've been making.
Can't you make things in America anymore?
Yeah. Where is that made? I don't know. I should check that out. Does it say on the bottom of my microphone?
Because, 62 years ago, they made good things in America. That's when I was born.
Yeah. That was the last good one there.
It was the last good thing they made.
Yeah.
And, yada, 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 and get off my lawn. All right. I'll talk to you on Monday, and take care.
All right. Thank you. You do the same, and we'll try that. Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, on Monday, as it happens, we'll be traveling on Monday. We may have to end up with another recorded show.
Oh, well, that gives me another day to fix my boom.
Right. So fix that boom. You work on the boom thingy.
I'll work on the boom while you're away.
And, we'll do the same. Okay.
All right. Take care.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. So let's see. We got a big, I have finished the Friday show. I don't want to give anything away, but it's awesome. Elijah Cummings, in fact, said it would go down as one of the great podcasts in the history of our country. But that's something he says about almost everything. Quite frankly, this lamp, I love this lamp. This lamp will go down as one of the great lamps in the history of our country. By the way, he's out denying that, of course. It didn't take but 10 minutes to get that one done. But yeah, I finished a show, so I can promise you a Friday new program. And it's an interesting one. And I like to do these things on Fridays where we pick up on some of the stories that I think are important, particularly as background information, but don't necessarily merit immediate breaking news attention like some of the other craziness that happens around here. But let's see. I am still working on trying to get a Monday show together, and it's falling into great peril as things collapse around the home front. So We'll see. I'm going to do my best. And then, of course, next Friday, same thing is going to happen one way or the other. But I'm trying to get prepared so that I have new programming for you for as many days as possible. I would like to break that record and break that 100,000 download mark over at Libsyn. I guess as between Libsyn and Stitcher and a few other of the delivery methods, we are in fact cracking the 100,000 downloads per month mark. But I wouldn't mind seeing it on Libsyn alone. That's the one with the best stats, the easiest to get stats, I guess I should say. Stitcher keeps pretty good stats, and they're good for, 4,000 or 5,000 a month. But we're over 95,000 on Stitcher alone. So thank you to everybody who's downloading and listening and helping the show to grow. And if you're new to the show, and some of you must be since we're growing, I encourage you to take ownership of part of the show, in a manner of speaking, by which I mean giving money and then walking away and demanding nothing. But yes, well, I hope you'll visit our Patreon page and help give us some sort of sustaining support in the form of a monthly recurring contribution, or if you prefer, and as many people do, even people who would otherwise be happy to give recurring support but just don't like the idea of having their credit card out there floating around forever and being charged all the time. Sometimes people just want to make a one-time donation either to cover what they might have given for a year, or they just say, hey, I happen to have $5 and that's about the limit of things, and why don't we just go ahead and do that? That is fine. $1, that's fine. Nothing, it's fine. I'll live with it. But would you like to, if I could get you to take ownership and feel like you're part of the show and help us out, not only with equipment costs, but to tell you the truth, this thing, as it grows, becomes a bigger and bigger part of my day, which means less and less of it is available to make our money elsewhere. I wouldn't mind professionalizing the show, wouldn't mind being able to pay some of the people who help with the show for all their help, wouldn't mind being able to staff it up and get somebody else out there in charge of hawking the damn thing out there and stoking the growth. This is the most amazing thing about the growth, is that we've done next to nothing by way of promotion. We post the thing at Daily Coast, that's worth a lot. That's the entirety of our growth, I would guess. And it's hugely important to our growth, but we could be doing so much more. I think, because I don't know anything about what we could be doing. I don't have the time to look into it, but there's some great ideas out there. Love to see them implemented. Hate to see them implemented without being able to pay the people who implement them, though, to the extent that I simply won't. Just won't implement them. That's not fair. Anyway, that's the pitch. I'll organize it better, but at least I'm not saying anything. I'm trying to stay away from the self-deprecation on that one. Appreciate all your help. Those of you who have been a part of the show for many weeks or even many months now. I can't tell you, my voice is breaking with emotion over how much I appreciate it. I really do. It's also, I don't know. I guess guess you could call it an ego thing to some extent, right? It's nice to know that there are people listening, and that goes for getting comments from people, getting feedback, getting recorded segments from people who want to be a part of the show. And yes, sometimes donations. It's just nice to know that we're not speaking out into the ether. We know it's not necessarily the case. We know we're not all alone, but it's nice to get some real measure of it. And if you can also maybe, use some investment to deliver a better product and grow based on that, that would be a great thing too. We're getting to that point in this country where we're going to need this sort of thing. I know lots of people have mentioned that we've kept them sane through the transition and into the early days of the Trump administration, at least as sane as we're able to keep anybody. And we're glad to have been able to be there for you for that. But the country at large is going to need some kind of reassurance as well. Imagine all the people who agree with us who aren't getting this kind of support. We owe it to them, I guess we could say, to reach out to them and understand them the way we do with Trump voters, or even mythical Trump voters, as Greg pointed out. But yeah, I have a feeling that progressive, or might be relabeled as resistance media, resistance radio should be a hot property over the next couple of years. And we can, I don't know, the world can be fed corporate resistance or grassroots resistance. I'm hoping that we can feed them our brand. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so end of pitch. Moving on here. It did remind me of something, though. I can't remember who said it. I should have put this one aside. I thought a funny offhand remark on Twitter that once again escaped my capture. But I thought it was a good remark following up on the piece that Greg read us, the satire piece actually about going out and speaking to the Trump voters. Somebody I follow regularly, and I'm sorry I couldn't put my finger on it for you and share it with you. Somebody I think made a good prediction. The prediction being that somewhere along the line, like the next big journalism scandal, fabulous journalism scandal, was likely to be, they just had a feeling that it was going to be somebody faking their talking to Trump voters in the hinterlands interview articles. And I don't know, had the ring of truthiness to it, and I may even have retweeted it. That might be the way I can find it, but I think it was a couple of days ago. It just putting that out there. So that when it happens, you'll say, I heard that first on the Kagro in the Morning show, because he was telling me how somebody else had said it first. That's what we do here. That's the basis of the show. I'm sorry to bring it back to reality. We read what others report. We make more of it than we're entitled to, but we do that. That's basically what we do. All right. So yes. Justice sharing with me the raw story reporting on Devin Nunes stepping aside. Now we have the statement procured by Jamie Dupree, which, good standard stuff. Does raw story have anything additional beyond that? I'll take a quick look. Just laying out the basics of it. But yeah, Trey Gowdy, Tom Rooney, and Conaway as a triumvirate, I guess, taking over the duties of the chair, even though Devin Nunes says he'll perform all the other duties of the chair, whatever those might be, banging the gavel, running around and saying things are terrible, I guess. That's probably part of the job, too. All right. This is a good idea. Somebody says, I've been approached a couple of times with the idea of selling hats or T-shirts to try and help bolster the coffers here at the show. And maybe finally the thing to put on a T-shirt is a T-shirt that says Elijah Cummings said I'd go down as one of the great T-shirts, perhaps, or a T-shirt wearer in the history of our country. I'm with the guy who Elijah Cummings said would go down as one of the great whatever. All right. So, okay. Yes. Let's see. We have a couple other issues here to catch up on. I know I put a bunch of things in pocket. I know I have some things about Gorsuch as well, and I really should be monitoring let's go take a look. You and I together. We'll go over and see what's on the floor agenda for today and see if we can pinpoint times for any key votes. What's today? Thursday, April 6th. The schedule, here we go. Thanks to the Democratic Leader's Office. The Senate stands in recess until 10, so that's 5 minutes from now. We haven't missed anything yet. Following leader remarks, the Senate will resume consideration of the nomination of Neil Gorsuch, with the time following leader remarks until 11 a.m. equally divided. So it won't happen during the show. Last time the nuclear option was actually triggered back in November, I think we learned it was the 21st, November 21st, 2013. I was on the air when they did it, and it occurred to me I should have just been watching C-SPAN and commenting along with it. We all could have watched together, but instead I decided to go ahead and do a regular show, and only afterwards did I say, oh yeah, look at that. That thing I've been working for like 10 years has finally come to pass. Okay. Armando has some comments to add on the Nunes situation. So let's bring him in. Good morning, Armando. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, David.
What up with our Nunes here? What's going on?
Well, a couple things. First, I can never pass on an opportunity to tell Greg he's wrong.
Oh?
And he's wrong because
How?
it was not inevitable that Nunes was going to do this.
Okay.
In fact, you could argue he weathered the storm.
I don't know if okay. I mean, there's always the possibility. We did say, I did bring that up. I thought he, in normal circumstances, would and should step down, but Republicans just kind of tend not to. And
Exactly.
Trump, in particular, I'm just not going to show you my taxes. I'm just not going to divest. But his answer to that was though that, and this has a lot of validity to it too. There's things that Trump can get away with that other people may try to do, and it just won't fly because they're not him.
Yeah, but Republicans have been ignoring, having to do things.
Yes,
forever.
Prior to Trump, there's plenty of evidence of things that we all know would cause a Democrat to resign, but that Republicans would just say,
right.
David Vitter.
So I mean, I don't think today he just woke up and had an epiphany. I think that, especially if you look at Ryan's statement, you might want to look at that one. If you can find it. Paul Ryan had a statement on it as well.
Okay.
There's an honest to goodness ethics committee investigation on Nunes' conduct.
Well, there ought to be.
Is probably the catalyst for this.
Okay.
And yes, he mentioned it in his statement, but the fact that Ryan did too, I think means, well, this is now a formal investigation. I'll
buy that.
And if you're formally under the ethics investigation, even the media says, well, wait a second, you're under ethics investigation.
Right.
And yes, at best for the Republicans, it would have been a, quote, distraction, unquote. I thought, and I've asked the question and I've seen no reporting on it. When he says he's stepping down from the investigation, does that include the, quote, unmasking, unquote, investigation?
Maybe because when Greg read the statement that he put out, that seems to have been hinted at. I mean, he certainly mentioned it. But,
I'm beginning to think yes, simply because I would assume the ethics investigation was about how he got the documents.
That's probably true.
So it's very likely that that's gone. I still think, obviously, his committee is useless because the next guy, what did they say? Trey Gowdy and Rooney and
Mike Conaway. Yeah.
I mean, those are three clowns. Let's be honest.
I'd rather
and no one's going to trust them either.
Right.
So at the end of the day, what they need is an independent investigation of all of it if they want to do it. I mean, I think in some ways that should be the Democrat play. So, forget all this. You want to investigate unmasking? Let's do it. You want to investigate everything else? Let's do it. But let's do it by somebody who's going to carry the trust of the American people. We can't. Now that everyone's pretending the Senate committee somehow is not going to pull its punches, but it's going to happen. If there's real evidence, and frankly, I'm beginning to think there will be, of Trump campaign collusion with the Russians, the Republicans are going to stonewall it. In the Senate too. I mean, I just think that. I mean, unless they've made a decision that they're cutting Trump loose. They're nowhere near that right now. So
No.
I think that what Nunes going wasn't inevitable, probably more tied to the fact that there's now probably a formal, what turned into a complaint has now become a formal investigation. There's cause to investigate. And that, I think, pretty much eliminated him from this investigation. But it doesn't solve frankly, the maximum problem, which is that these committees really don't work ever. I mean, and I would say the same if it was a Democrat. And the Democrats had control of the committee. It's just not going to work. It has no credibility. What's the point of the investigation, right? It's to either clear the air or say, well, something happened.
Yeah.
It will do neither.
Not likely.
So, everyone's beating around the bush and fighting about it. I had a fight with Eli Lake last night. About his stupid stories on Susan Rice. And, he's one of these, well, if you really, what we need is an independent investigation. Say, hey, genius, there's one party that's for an independent investigation. There's one that's not.
Yes.
Maybe you might want to mention that. And it may tell you something about what's going on here. But Eli Lake is Eli Lake, so it was more rhetorical than thinking I would persuade him on anything.
Yeah, I gotcha. But, that's likely true. It is a weird thing. I have to learn some more about exactly what was going on with Rice, and just because I have the feeling that I've got it right, but I guess it's important to make sure that you have the various steps and facts correct. But
well, I can give you what I know based on my understanding of the situation. The accusation from Eli Lake, it originated with Mike Cernovich of Pizzagate fame.
And a number of other disgusting things as well.
Yes, but it got more traction when Mr. Lake ran his story based on White House officials, which almost certainly are Cohen, Watkett, and Ellis, who are almost certainly the sources are on his previous Nunes-related false stories. What I think, and I have asked this question, is there an accusation that Rice amassed anybody during the election? And apparently not, which I think is an interesting point, because if you're doing it for political purposes, clearly the first position you would want to you do something for political purposes is during an election where it can actually affect votes.
Right.
It seems to me.
So it didn't happen until the transition.
Apparently only, from what we can glean, the charges she did it during the transition.
So now, I guess my big question is, what does and we may never know this one just because of the nature of these sorts of documents, but I wanted to know what prompted this, like what lands on her desk. Is it a transcript of a conversation of a monitored foreign operative, Russians, that are saying, so I talked to the Donald Trump team the other day to thank them for their help in colluding on the elections, and then the National Security Advisor says, I think I want to know who is U.S. person number one in this conversation, and it's not the case that the transcript says, ring ring, click, hello, Trump transition headquarters. Hello, this is Sergei Kislyak.
No, that didn't happen.
With which U.S. person I am speaking? I'd like to find that
very
out.
Very good Boris Badenov.
Yeah, she doesn't. This is, I guess, the process and the secrecy surrounding it allows the Republicans here to conflate things and to say that Rice ordered the National Security Administration, the National Security Agency, rather, to monitor what was going on in the Trump camp and tell her, I want you to look for incidental capture of Trump-related people's conversations and give them to me. No, it's this is what I usually read, the Russians who speak to people, and oh my God, what the hell is this story? What? Who is this U.S. person? You better tell me. And then it turned out to be a Trump person, and then they said, well, now we really have something to worry about, and it started from there.
Yeah,
I don't know how it works.
Here's, to the degree that this reporting is in any way sound, the story is she was getting her regular intelligence reports, and I assume she gets several. We've seen a PDB before, so we know that it probably doesn't dig down to that level, so it must be some other type of report that was given to her. Because we know that there were minimization procedures, we know that this was pursuant to a FISA warrant, as opposed to a 702 finding, which wouldn't involve conversations anyway, because 702 is basically you get this database and you can make queries into it. And that's almost all related to electronic communication. But That, by the way, watch out for 702 this summer. It's going to be quite an interesting debate in Congress, but that's related to the to different surveillance laws, in particular Patriot Act stuff. So that'll be an interesting point. But to get back to Rice, what we're told is Rice got a report and saw something that she thought required unmasking of American person number 1 or number 2 or number 7, whatever it was. And she put in her request. Apparently there's a very formal procedure for this to whoever the originating agency was, most likely the NSA. I think you're right about that. And the NSA has a process. The NSA process is the originator, the specific person, let's say an NSA agent, a supervisor of the NSA agent, if there is one, and a lawyer review the request, determine whether it's a reasonable request, and if they do agree with the request, they send it solely to the person making the request.
Okay.
All right. So they say the other reporting I saw is that it was Rice did this once apparently in the period, and this is what's fascinating. It wasn't Flynn. It was somebody else in the Trump transition team.
Oh, well, I imagine Stephen Bannon is monitoring him too.
I'm not sure. I don't have any likely suspects of who that would be off the top of my head. But it could be Devin Nunes for all we know, because guess what? He was on the Trump transition team.
Yes, he was.
So who it was. Now, interestingly, Flynn was unmasked by, according to this reporting, by a second person in the administration. But we don't know who that person was, and apparently they're not going to make a fuss about the Flynn unmasking, from what we can tell. Because they haven't.
They're running away as fast as they can from Flynn. They claim they unmasked him at this point.
Right. Now, let's go back to what unmasking means. Unmasking means what I just said, that for the person making the request, they get to find out who that person is.
Yes.
Nobody else does. Nobody else in the government does.
It's like the secret password on
a request to say, well, I need to disseminate this. Then there's a whole new process about dissemination of the unmasked person.
Right.
So, and there's very detailed paper trails of these things. So you can find out literally what actually happened.
Yeah, that's how they know that Susan Rice was the one who made this request. Right? So, and Susan Rice, in her appearance with Andrea Mitchell, I think, both for reasons of not revealing classified information. By the way, the request of unmasking is itself classified. So revealing that it happened is an illegal criminal leak of classified information, if you want to be that type of person. Yeah, in fact, I just saw that Leanne Caldwell, for NBC reporter, has tweeted around the section, I guess, of the Ethics Committee paperwork as to why Nunes is being investigated. It says that the committee is aware of public allegations that Nunes, quote, may have
revealed classified information.
Right. Revealed, made unauthorized disclosures of classified information in violation of House rules, law, regulations, and other standards of conduct.
He absolutely did. I think there's no doubt about that. And it's funny, he stood up in front of the White House and did it.
Yeah, yes, and that's made a great shot. Thank you very much for framing a beautiful picture for us on that one. I don't know who lodged this complaint. That part of it is not
I think
clear.
Probably Crew or
Yeah, most likely.
There's a group of left-wing activists who do
yes.
that. And by the way, there's a group of right-wing activists that do it.
Yes.
Against Democrats. I mean, and listen, the fact that they have a point of view doesn't mean that it's not valid in either way. Sometimes it's valid against Democrats.
When will no labels start doing this? That's what I want. I want independent complaints.
I know.
Okay, well, yeah, it's true. It doesn't really matter who levels the complaint. The committee is taking it seriously, and that's why Nunes has sidelined himself, I guess is the best way to say it.
And you know more about this than I, but my recollection is the ethics committee is actually evenly balanced between Republicans and Democrats.
Because that's how great things get done. But yeah, you really have to. That was the design. You have to be able to convince people on something other than a partisan basis that something is really happening here, and that's why they never do anything. But here they are.
What would be fascinating, and I have no idea. I would love to know who the members of the ethics committee are, particularly on the Republican side.
It is classified. It's not classified. We can look it up. But yeah, you go ahead and I'll look it up.
I don't know. I mean,
I'll
I
tell
should
you when
know,
you're
but
done.
I don't because I hadn't really focused on this. And the reason I think it's interesting is suppose you get one or two renegade Republicans finding an ethics violation.
Yeah. Well.
And God forbid making a criminal referral on Nunes.
Mm-hmm. Here's the answer. Chair of the committee at the moment is Susan Brooks of Indiana. The Republicans are... Oh, this is great. We can guess who didn't do it. Ready? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's who did do it. Here's the answer. All right, so for the Democrats, Ted Deutsch, Florida, Yvette Clarke from New York, Jared Polis, Colorado, Anthony Brown of Maryland, and Steve Cohen of Tennessee. It's a very... people hate being on the ethics committee. You don't typically get superstars to agree. Susan Brooks is the chair. Patrick Meehan of Pennsylvania on the committee. Also Kenny Marchant of Texas. Leonard Lance of New Jersey. The third-ranking Republican I skipped over. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Want to take a guess?
Walter Jones.
No, that would be good. This is better, like, in terms of, like, that Walter Jones would make sense. Well, of course, he's going to be honest, and he'll be the one that tips the balance. But these are Republicans. I'm looking for somebody who would act perhaps duplicitously or nefariously. And
the other side of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Trey Gowdy.
That's it. Trey Gowdy is on the ethics committee. And
so Gowdy sandbagged him and knocked him out?
I don't know that that's true, but if we're wondering, well, why wasn't it a 5-5 tie along partisan lines?
I am wondering that. Why wasn't it a 5-5?
One possible answer is one of the 5 Republicans stood to seize the reins of the investigation for himself if Nunes stepped aside.
By reputation, the staffing at the ethics committee is very professional and very honest.
Staffing, yes.
By reputation, I have no idea if that's true. I'm just repeating what is reputed.
The professional staff typically, people do say that about them. I will agree.
They do say. I mean, again, I don't know any of them. I've never.
The members, on the other hand, are a different story, and it would be really interesting. I wonder, I don't know if it's a matter of public record now, what, if any vote was held and how it went, but wouldn't that be something if it was a 6-4 vote to move ahead and vote number
Gowdy
6
was
is
the
Gowdy.
That would be funny, no question about it.
I mean, any other names jump out at you as like, well, okay,
Lance a little bit
really?
Because Lance is in a swing district and he's already in some difficulty. Christie really hurt Republicans across the board, and Lance is in one of the more vulnerable districts. He's one of the top 5 targets that Democrats will have to defeat in 2018. Nonetheless, unless he gets to make a public speech about it, I'm not sure how this helps him, but maybe he'll talk about his work in the ethics committee somehow and to show that he's not Trump's puppet or something. I don't know. But, Gowdy and Lance, I don't know about Susan Brooks and all these people. Maybe they're seriously taking their job and they said, this is a real thing. We got to look at it.
Could be.
I know I'm as cynical as the next guy. more so than the next guy, actually. But, maybe there's some hope here. Or maybe the evidence was so damning as presented by the staff that there was nothing they could really do.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I love the theory. Well, I will happily.
I think it's an absolutely plausible theory that Trey Gowdy's behind it.
I will happily disseminate that theory. Arliss Bunny says Susan Brooks is a human.
Okay.
That is to mean.
Well, that's a plus.
I take that to mean that she's a decent human and might well have been that vote. So maybe it was unanimous.
I do think that's what's behind Nunes doing this today.
Yes.
It seems to me. I think that if you look at all the statements put together and the attack on left-wing activists, blah, 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 that seems to me to have been the catalyst for today. I would venture to say that if there hadn't been something taken up by the ethics committee, Nunes would never have recused. I think he was going to brazen it out, personally.
Very possibly true. Michael Musson has this observation, which I don't know whether this makes it better or worse, and I'm going to go with worse. Perhaps Gowdy, although he says Gouda, I like that better. Perhaps Gowdy recused himself from the vote on ethics, and I would say, I guess that would be a possibility. That would be, if I thought Gowdy was smart enough, I would say that would
beautiful.
Be the
thing to
that
do.
Would be fantastic, because I can't. No, I'm just no. Knowing full well that it would mean that the investigation would go forward, and he'd step aside, and then he'd take the reins, and then people would foolishly accuse him of having voted to move the investigation forward, when instead he in fact abstained the investigation forward. And he's
right,
blameless.
He abstained it forward, knowing exactly what that meant. That's like voting yes.
Yeah.
And it gives him cover. No, but I really do have a conflict, and the reality is maybe he does, because it's part of the committee. The action came in the committee that he forms a part of.
So I like it. It's a good story, and
let's run with it until someone
happily
denies.
Smear Trey Gowdy with it for the rest of the day.
Let's do like Eli Lake. Let's run with it until it's disproven.
Right? Why not? I read it on Breitbart.
Or Breitbart. Yeah, I don't even know. It's funny. I was thinking of something completely unrelated here. Whatever happened to Milo?
He was fired from there.
Yeah, I know,
and
but he's disappeared. And I was thinking, you know what? Maybe he hasn't disappeared. Maybe it's because I actually don't consume right-wing news at all.
Well, that could be. He may be elsewhere.
It's like Kellyanne Conway. And I said, what happened to Kellyanne Conway? And apparently she's,
What happened to Katrina Pearson?
Whatever happened to Katrina Pearson?
I don't know exactly. I put aside an article at one point that she peeked her head back into the news, and the news was that she's spending her days hanging around the Trump Hotel in D.C., like trying to work out a power broker situation for herself, and may yet land a administration job in some way.
So she sits in the lobby and says, "Welcome to my office"?
Yeah, pretty much.
Huh.
I'll have to see if I can dig that one up. But I have something also about Milo. Somewhere here in the last couple of days came an article that, I just had to plug into my ongoing theory background, was that Milo was also being funded by the Mercers. And just, again, another one of these people who's like, well, he's an up-and-comer. He's really is a power broker. He's a rising star. That, again, the Mercers are picking, choosing, and funding a roster of people that they want to be considered rising stars in Republican politics. And it's working to some extent. But the people are so awful at heart that it all falls apart very quickly. But, as you know,
it's not that they're evil, it's that they're incompetent.
Yeah, well, the evil helps. But,
from the perspective of Trump and the Republicans.
Yeah.
You're a bad person. Yeah, but are you any good?
Right.
Lee Atwater was evil, but Lee Atwater was good at what he did.
Yeah. Others seem to be incompetent. I wonder where I can find that. I don't know. It's the search function of Pocket, I think, just searches the headlines and not the body. I
don't know. That's too bad because where are they now would make for a great weekly segment on this Trump administration.
Well, I wonder if I can find it while we're
Katrina Pearson. Man, I had not heard that name in a long time.
Yeah. Well, she did come up in this. I wonder if that's out there too. Let me see. Katrina Pearson, is she gonna pop up? No.
No, Katrina Pearson. She doesn't even make it to Pocket.
Right. I'll have to search on the news, the actual, the Google
Googles.
News, the Googles, right? Well, we'll see if I can't find that somewhere. But
I've taken you off course because I knew you were going to go back to this nuclear option thing, and I'm going to hang up now so you can get back to the show. It's just this is an interesting development with Nunes, and just wanted to talk about it a little bit with you.
Yes, true, and we may have, stumbled upon the big story of how this whole thing happened in the first place. If Trey Gowdy had anything to do with it.
Yeah, well, he's got some explaining to do. I wonder if anybody will ask him. He's like, well, those are confidential proceedings. I can't comment on that. Yeah, that's sort of the point. Your boy Nunes went out and talked about classified information in front of the White House.
Yeah. Not smart. I don't know why they keep doing this. Here's the story, I guess, from muckrock.com. Not muckrake, but muckrock.com. Same billionaire that funded Trump's campaign bankrolled Milo's speaking tour, the very infamous speaking tour, which really kind of precipitated the whole collapse. So that's interesting. It won't open the story, but that's the headline that I got on it. And
it was the CPAC thing, man. He was going to speak at CPAC. I remember Matt Schlapp saying, "Rawr!"
Right.
Then, and I'm getting, but I'm cutting him now because whatever. Okay, Matt Schlapp, whatever.
Okay, that guy's name is ridiculous.
It's not. He needs to be slapped. That's for sure.
That is the sound
he's just
makes
one of
when
the more
you slap him
ridiculous
with a
fingers
fish.
I ever see. But anyway, let me let you go and get back to the rest of your show. Thanks for letting me do my little Nunes interlude.
Sure thing. Thanks
All right,
for
have a
stopping
good one.
by. Okay, take care. Look at this. All right. Well, let's see if I can find. Let's try one more time with the Google here. I can't get that article to open, but all we really needed was the headline, just to put that on record. But what about Katrina Pearson? I'm pretty sure I read about her hanging out in the hotel, but how would I find that? Katrina Pearson, Trump Hotel. Here's one piece. March 7th from the Washingtonian. Is Katrina Pearson actually doing anything? That's pretty funny. That must be the one that I had because it mentions her in the hotel. Of course, that's what I Googled, so that's how I got it. But Elena Plott writing in early March, and it seems like that was about the timeline. And is Katrina Pearson actually doing anything? The Trump campaign's most prolific spokesperson moved to D.C. to help run the White House's nonprofit political arm, but evidence of its work has proved elusive. On the eve of President Trump's joint address to Congress, Katrina Pearson strolls into the Trump hotel lobby, her face buried in her gold-bedazzled phone. She's just arrived from a Fox News hit, and the suit-clad men gather at the bar, sipping Manhattans. Notice, they gesture at the television, then back to her, as if Pearson has literally just stepped out of the screen. When she joins me at our table at BLT Prime, that's the restaurant that Trump goes to when he wants to burn steaks, a busboy hurries over, asks if we're ready to order. "Oh yeah," she says breezily, shrugging out of her black leather jacket. "You can send Josh over." It's unsurprising that our fellow patrons immediately lean back in their chairs, arch their necks to get a better look. Pearson was, after all, the now president's most prolific spokesman on the campaign trail. At times, she'd shuttle through as many as 15 cable news segments a day, most of them from a makeshift studio in her Texas home. For every setback on the trail, Corey Lewandowski's alleged assault on a female reporter, the Access Hollywood tape, et cetera, et cetera. Pearson was ready with a full court press. She prided, you know, the story of Katrina Pearson. But the election has come and gone, and last anyone heard, Pearson was lobbying hard for a spot in the White House press shop. That didn't happen, of course, and Pearson now finds herself helping run America First Policies, the nonprofit ostensibly organized to promote Trump's agenda. It's just that there's no agenda. The group has had little discernible movement since its launch in January and is only now, Pearson said, settled on a location for its headquarters. She can't remember exactly where it is, it says. She admits the group hasn't done anything exciting yet, but with a flourish that would make her former boss glow, she says it has some opportunities to do some really great things in the future. It's all terrifically vague and unglamorous for someone who once championed her role as Team Trump's most visible player, yet Pearson swears she's exactly where she wants to be, just like Stephen Bannon. I think I'll skip the rest of it, just wanted to sort of get that one on record. I have no doubt that they told her she would be in charge of the thing, and she's just like, okay, well, as soon as if I'm getting paid, I'll just wait here. You tell me to do something, I'll do it. You know, not a real proactive person, but whatever. I'm just guessing. I don't know her personally. All right. Let's see. What happened to all the rest of my pocket? There we go. Let's get rid of the search. What else did I want to tell you about? Let's see. We've ridiculed the Stephen Bannon thing to the extent necessary, I guess. I mean, the whole thing was stupid from top to bottom. I loved the hour afterwards where he was reacting like he really meant this whole thing to happen, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, I guess we're probably best served by taking the warning that this might just be window dressing and that nothing has really changed with respect to his position in the White House. But I would be very interested to know whether Jared Kushner is, what side is he taking in this? Is he pushing Bannon aside or what? Because for a while there it looked like their interests may be aligning. But I guess among the power hungry, it's very difficult to see people aligning their interests for very long. Let's see. The news of yesterday, which isn't getting a lot of play because it was terribly stupid, and I'm glad that it's not getting much play, but the New York Times headline yesterday that I think came out of the whole interview. There's more play for the transcript of dumb things that the president said during the interview than there is on this story, headlined properly, I guess. Trump, citing no evidence, suggests Susan Rice committed a crime. But, you know, it's a headline. Committed crime is what it says. All right. Well, anyway, I guess there's no point in repeating the stupid allegation. I guess I'm just glad that one was properly treated in the headline and really went nowhere, and instead everybody's talking about the nonsensical things and is making fun of his stupid claim about Elijah Cummings. All right. Other bits of news that might deserve more attention. Let's see. Yes, as I mentioned to you, the scramble to repeal Obama-era rules through the Congressional Review Act coming to an end. The Hill also picked up on that story. Just by way of recapping all of that, because we've heard that name called a lot, the Congressional Review Act. Trump still scrambling to roll back as many Obama-era regulations as he can before time runs out at the end of the month. The president has already struck down 11 regulations issued by the Obama administration through the Congressional Review Act and is expected to sign 2 more in the coming days. That, though, may be the end of it. I did mention to you that Ed Kilgore, who's a favorite of Armando's actually, had written about it in New York Magazine, noting that everything could grind to a halt on April 28th. He says it's an increasingly well-known fact, thanks largely to Joan McCarter, I would say, that the temporary appropriations measure, technically known as a continuing resolution, or CR, keeping the lights on for the federal government, runs out at midnight on April 28th, a few days after Congress returns from its 2-week Easter recess. There's a very real chance the government will shut down, at least temporarily, on that date, thanks to a plethora of potential conflicts, ranging from Planned Parenthood to healthcare to the border wall to Trump budget cuts. It's largely a coincidence, but there is another thing highly significant about April 28th. That's when the power of Congress to reverse Obama administration regulations via the streamlined provisions of the Congressional Review Act expires. And as Alexei McCammond of Axios notes, the level of productive activity in the GOP trifecta, Washington, will go down sharply. And it is herein noted Trump hasn't been able to pass any major bills that he's passionate about, like AHCA, nor has he introduced any major legislation. Using the CRA to pass resolutions into law has afforded the Trump administration numerous record-setting, as he says, small victories, but after its looming deadline, they will have to figure out another way. If Republicans, Ed continues, can resolve the shutdown crisis by extending the CR, in other words, the absence of the CRA as an option for them will accentuate the sound of legislative crickets for this administration and Congress. Maybe Congress can go back on recess until somebody figures it all out. That's largely true. That's the one vehicle that's been available to them that the filibuster-proof rules on the Congressional Review Act. That's afforded them the opportunity to appear to be doing things. That goes away at the end of the month, and nobody knows what they're going to do next. But they have a lot of very big work to do. All right, let's see. Here is a note from, who is this? Jessica Schulberg, foreign affairs reporter at the Huffington Post, noting that the House Ethics Committee investigation into allegations that Nunes leaked classified info was triggered by internal concerns, not outside groups. Very interesting. And Greg has forwarded here a tweet from Tim Mack, the senior Daily Beast Daily Beast senior correspondent. I have those words in the wrong order. Writing about national security and politics, who says, I do not think that Nunes is stepping aside from Russia probe due to the ethics complaint. More, I guess, to come from Tim on that one. I guess let's open up that timeline and see if there's anything more. Let's see. House, where was that one? This looks like it might be something of a tweet storm, though not necessarily linked. But where is the one that he says, I don't think that this happened because of that? Is that too? Dang. Here we are. All right. He begins with the statement from Paul Ryan on Nunes. Speaker Ryan supports Nunes' decision to step aside from Russia probe ethics, blah, 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 would be a distraction. He says then, Tim does, I don't think that Nunes is stepping aside from the Russia probe due to OCE, the Office of Congressional Ethics complaint. Recall that the first OCE complaint was made against Nunes last week, and he has shrugged off suggestions to step aside since. He then retweets Rick Klein, who says, Spear says House Intel Committee wasn't told this morning that Nunes was stepping aside. Most of this whole experience has been odd. Then here, let's see, Tim retweets Justin Miller saying the downfall of Devin Nunes started here. A link to a Daily Beast piece. Devin Nunes vanished the night before he made the Trump surveillance claims. Daily Beast was the first to break that Nunes mysteriously vanished from his staff the night before his presser. House Ethics Committee now launches investigation of Devin Nunes for spilling secrets. That's covered in the Daily Beast, according to Tim. The investigation will include a full subpoena power of documents and people. Deep rabbit hole. Recall, he spoke to Ryan/White House. The Ethics Committee is truly bipartisan with an equal number of Democrats and Republicans. New investigation into Nunes is called an 18A investigation, not, as Nunes suggested, triggered by outside groups. Schiff scheduled for a presser at 10:10. I guess that's already started. And what else have we got here? So we're investigating the investigator who is investigating the investigation of Russian inception whoomp from Julian Sanchez here. Gowdy asked about Nunes, looks away. Y'all have a good weekend. That's the quote. He looked super downcast, according to Tim Mack. To avoid confusion, there is a difference between a House Ethics Committee and the Office of Congressional Ethics. House Ethics can only launch a probe on a request of a member. This investigation is about whether Nunes leaked classified information when talking about FISA warrants publicly. Schiff commends Nunes for stepping aside on the Russia investigation. The Daily Beast reported a week ago that House Ethics probe was likely. Trey Gowdy is also on the House Ethics Committee. The thing to remember here is that when this all started, Dems had no desire to oust Nunes. Total own goal. Schiff tells the press he learned about Nunes stepping aside from his press release, said it was somber inside the SCIF when they heard secure, they were examining some secure or some classified information in one of the SCIFs. Okay. Nunes is trying to confuse the issue. The House Ethics Committee is investigating him. Okay. This is Kyle Feldscher being retweeted by Tim Mack. So, did Nunes confirm that the Office of Congressional Ethics is investigating him as well as the House Ethics Committee? I guess so. Committee is aware of the public allegations that Representative Devin Nunes may have made unauthorized disclosures of classified information. The House Ethics Committee notes that an investigation is not evidence that Nunes actually violated any rules. Then Jessica Schulberg's note about this being triggered by internal concerns rather than outside groups. Speaker Ryan says it's right for him to step aside. And then he notes at the end of this, for the House, it's the weekend already. And after the Nunes recusal, new health care amendment has come up. House raced through the last vote before the recess. One and done, said one representative as he ran for an elevator. That according to Alexis Levinson reporting as well. So that we're going to go into the weekend with this. And then we're all just going to have that floating out there for the talk shows. He's still tweeting up a storm here, too. Here's a question, Tim Mack says. Can Trey Gowdy help lead the Russia investigation while he participates in the Ethics Committee probe into Nunes? Gee whiz, probably not. He says, I'm getting dizzy. Man, that's a lot of tweets, and I don't know if they're all linked, but Tim Mack is your guy, and I guess I probably ought to open one of those tweets anyway to share with Scott so you can at least try and follow along at home if you want to. All right, so let's see. That ate up a bit of time, but it's, I think, well worth doing. Another question. Let's see. Interesting. Dave Weigel has a tweet here that Michael Musson has forwarded on to me saying, Grassley, heading into vote, confident that ours will blow up the filibuster. Says the Senate will return to the rules used from 1789 to 2003. Maybe. I'm not certain what he's saying there. I think he's trying to hint at the fact that the filibuster will become rare again like it used to be, but I don't know that that was necessarily the case in 2003. But he's thinking 2003 because in Grassley and many Republicans' minds, the abuse of the filibuster began with Democrats filibustering George W. Bush's judicial nominees. But just by way of countering that, there is information available on the Senate's page. Where do they keep this now? I may have to go through Google to find this, but the Senate keeps pretty good information on the number of cloture filings per Congress. And you can track that then over time and see how often cloture is filed for. And that's not a perfect illustration of the frequency with which the filibuster or filibuster-like delays are used, since not all delays can be defeated by cloture, like, for instance, not bringing the Merrick Garland nomination to the floor at all, as people are trying to pretend that that's not a filibuster. But let's see. The number of motions filed, it's a rough guide, and I guess if he says they're going back to the rules prior to 2003, that's where he puts that mark, there were 62 cloture motions filed during the 108th Congress. That would be 2003 and 2004. 68 in the next Congress. And then, take note of this, okay? So 62, 68, that's a lot by overall historical standards. I mean, if you go way back to the beginning of the cloture rule, 1917, the 65th Congress saw cloture filed for twice, invoked not at all. So the early years, though, from the early part of the 20th century, really all the way through until, it's not until 1971 that they get into double-digit cloture filings, is really actually quite amazing. And it stands to reason cloture was actually very difficult to invoke. It wouldn't often be resorted to, but there are other explanations for it, too. In 1971 and 72, 24 filings for cloture. 20 times it was, 20 times it was voted on. 4 times cloture was actually invoked at that point. So it becomes very difficult once the number rises. In 1973 and 74, and we know what's going on during that period, and there's Watergate, and there's all sorts of issues, 44 filings for cloture, only 9 times was cloture invoked. So from single digits to 44 in the span of the Watergate years. But, that was understandable. Well, what about post-Watergate? 1975 and 76, the 94th Congress, 39 filings for cloture, only 17 times invoked. But that's a lot of cloture invoked, 17, right? That's the first time that cloture is invoked in the double digits. Of course, those of you listening to the show will realize that in 1975, the beginning of 1975, was exactly when you saw what became known eventually as the nuclear or constitutional option was invoked, and the threshold for cloture was lowered from 2/3 to 3/5, or in other words, from 67 in a full Senate down to 60. So, boom, suddenly success, and it's invoked 17 times. And from there, the numbers stay in the double digits. It goes down a little bit as the filibuster becomes a less usable tool now due to easier cloture. The 95th Congress from 1977 to 78 saw 23 filings, and only 3 times cloture was invoked. Then 30, 31, 41, 41, 54 in the 100th Congress, 1987 to 98, 38, back down, then up to 60 in the 102nd Congress. And see if you can figure out what the pattern is here. The idea is to bust the Grassley myth here. 60 cloture filings, 23 times it was invoked, 48 times that there was a vote actually held on the cloture. That was 1991 to 92. And then in the 103rd Congress, 80 times cloture was filed for, 14 times invoked. Then the big Republican Revolution. What did it do to cloture filings? To take control of the Congress out of Democratic hands and hand it over to Republicans. Went from 80 cloture filings to a whopping 82. Then down to 69. Then up to 71, 71, 62, 68. This is all the way up to the 109th Congress. From 2005 and 2006, 68 times cloture was filed for, voted on 54 times, invoked 34 times. Tying the record set in the 107th Congress of 2001 to 2002. So then what happens? At that point, after the 2006 elections, of course, Democrats find themselves back in control of the House and the Senate. What happens? 139 times they have to file for cloture in the 110th Congress. The first time it's ever gone to triple digits. The previous record being 82, it now goes to almost 140. And then from there, it's just a fiasco. 139 filings, 137 filings in the 111th Congress, 115 filings in the 112th Congress, and 253 times they had to file for cloture in the 113th Congress. That would include, of course, 2013, at which point, late in the year, they changed the rules and nuked the filibuster for most appointments. 253 times cloture had to be filed for. 218 times it was voted for. It's never been in the 200s before and never has been since. 187 times cloture was invoked thanks to the rules change in 2013. Grassley's going on about 2003, apparently. Afterwards, the number of filings for cloture went down to 128. 124 votes on it, 61 times cloture was invoked, and now here we are in the 115th Congress, at which point the stats won't mean very much, except to say they are nuking the filibuster for the Supreme Court, and the frustrated Republicans have had enough. God damn it. There have been 17 motions for cloture filed. They have voted on cloture 15 of those times. And of those 15 times, they have invoked cloture 15 times. You can see how frustrating this must be. Why they nominated Gorsuch, they held the hearings, they reported him out, they brought him to the floor, and they're going to hold a vote in the same week that they brought it to the floor. They have time and time again have had to file cloture against the obstructionist Democrats. Why? 17 times as opposed to 253 just a few years ago. I know it's early. And they have voted on cloture 15 times and succeeded 15 times. But God damn it, you bastards, we're so frustrated. There's nothing frustrating going on. This is the first time that McConnell faces the prospect of not winning a cloture vote. And boom, gone. Gee whiz, would he really have done it absent Harry Reid? Well, as we noted in 2005, he was perfectly ready to do so. Nothing standing in his way. But here's the answer. The first time he's bumped into resistance, he's going to nuke the filibuster. Let's see, there's another tweet here. Chuck Grassley himself tweeting, this sent on to us by Michael Musson. I'm about to speak on the Senate floor about how ridiculous Dems' move to filibuster Gorsuch is, considering his outstanding qualifications for SCOTUS. Well, he doesn't have any of those, so whatever. Okay, moving on from there, a couple other items I want to put on the record. David Farenthold asking the other day about this one. I don't know if we discussed this on the air, but Trump finally got around to, this was before I thought he was going to get to this too. Oops, I've pulled the plug on my earphones here. You'll recall that during the transition period, Trump made his promise to donate his salary. He wasn't going to accept the presidential salary. He couldn't stop them from paying him because constitution, and that's true. But he could donate the salary, and he was going to do that, and he was going to give it back to the Treasury to cut the deficit. But then he decided, well, actually, maybe I'll donate it to charity or whatever, so that he can get a deduction, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not really sure what the reasoning was, but anyway, he wanted to do it his way. But he wasn't going to do it until the end of the year. I guess he realized that he was missing out on photo ops if he waited to the end of the year. Instead, he should make a big deal. Once a month, he should be donating his salary and presenting a big check to something or another, and they realized that was true, and so he went and he donated, I guess, his first 2 months' salary to the National Park Service, which is a fine place to give it. And they got a photo op the other day for this presentation, and the check would be something like $78,000 or so is 2 months' salary for the president. And they put together a big photo op. and some representative of the National Park Service showed up to collect it and had just a classic look on his face of pretty much almost an eye roll. It's the Harper's Ferry National Historic Site Superintendent Tyrone Brandyburg, according to Oliver Griswold, who made a great tweet about it, which we'll include in our roundup for you. And he's just like, I don't know. He's just looking at you like, oh boy, here I am to collect this thing. So the big question is, that people were asking, he's holding the real check, and then behind him is the giant blow up of the check. And they like to do that at these events so that the press can see that the whole thing is somehow authentic or whatever. And then people were looking at, I don't know whether they were looking at a photo of the check itself or of the blow up of the check. And if you believe that this administration, has integrity and is not just a bunch of thieves, you would say, well, obviously, when they blew up the check, they would have done this. They were noting that the account and routing numbers, which are essential parts of a check being valid, were missing from this check. And I'm sure that if you were making the big blow up, you would remove it. And people were saying, sure, they would want to block that out, but you don't just Photoshop erase the thing. And then people were wondering, oh, is this check real or is it some kind of Photoshop job? And you have to say you can't put anything past this White House, I guess, but that would really be beyond the pale. My guess is that on the blow up, like why wouldn't you just Photoshop it out instead of blocking it out? If you have the skills, go ahead and do it. It looks a lot neater than redacting the thing. But just had to entertain all my suspicions. Maybe, maybe Trump really does do something dumb, like hand him some kind of dummied up check. So David Farenthold tweeted a couple of, well, I guess at the time, tweeted that, I have asked the Park Service to please contact me when everything's fine with this, when this check has cleared, essentially. And what does he say? I've asked the National Park Service to let me know as soon as they receive/deposit the check from real Donald Trump. You really have to actually track it that closely. I'm just curious whether the thing really cleared. And I'd love to know. It would be an amazing story if they actually handed over a regular size, check to him that also had no routing number on it and the thing couldn't be deposited. That'd be hilarious. I don't even know what we would do at that point. What do you do with a president who would do something like that? I even as much as I want to believe it about Donald Trump, I'd have a hard time believing that. I'd have to read that one in a reputable news source before I believe that one. Amazing. Okay, let's see. Other important stories that probably ought to be discussed. Well, we're nearly out of time, so there aren't going to be a whole lot of things we can cram in. But again, it makes for a good opportunity to try to cram this stuff into a Monday show. At some point, I saw this one written up at the front page of Daily Kos, and let me just skip over there. Jen Hayden, if I'm not mistaken, did pick up on this one. Is it still on the recommended list? If not, I'm going to have to go into her diary and find it because it was pretty funny. But a big article that I did put aside, it looked like too long to kind of go into on the show, most shows anyway. But a New York Times piece titled, CNN Had a Problem, Donald Trump Solved It. I guess the problem was, hey, nobody's watching CNN anymore. And the solution was, well, now we have a completely ridiculous clown that we can use to boost interest in our daily broadcasts. I guess that's how he solved their problem. But there was this bit in here that Jen and others picked up on, and I had a good laugh at. If I can scroll back and find it, there's this bit in there where Trump, following the airing of the Access Hollywood tape on CNN, writes this angry, nasty note to Jeff Zucker of CNN, and it's really rather amazing. Read the vengeful note Trump sent to the CNN chief after they released the pussy grabbing tape is the headline that Jen uses here, and it's really pretty amazing. It just, where is it? There's this clip of it here says, for Zucker, the thick-skinned TV executive and newsman, it was just business. For Trump, the thin-skinned TV star and now approval-rating politician, it was tactical but also personal. He believed he had gotten Zucker his job at CNN and that the network's increasingly aggressive coverage of him was an act of betrayal. Trump didn't actually play a meaningful role in Zucker's hiring. The president is actually certainly entitled to believe whatever he likes about our conversation. Kent, whoever, I guess that's a key player in this, wrote me in an email. However, it was not a factor in the decision to hire Jeff. But after the second presidential debate in October, when several CNN panelists criticized Trump for dismissing his comments about grabbing women by the genitals as locker room talk, Zucker received an email from Trump via his campaign spokeswoman, Hope Hicks. How does she do it? Jeff, too bad you, CNN, couldn't be honest with how well I did in the debate. The dumbest thing I ever did was get you the job at CNN. You are the most disloyal person. I should have done this in the voice. Just remember, I always seem to find a way to get even. Best wishes, Donald J. Trump. A child's email, a child's threat. Unbelievable that this guy would engage in such behavior and think of himself as a grown adult, much less president of the United States. But I just thought I'd bring that one to your attention. There are other fantastic things out there that ought to be brought to your attention, like the fact that Donald Trump stands by serial sexual harasser Bill O'Reilly. This is another headline from Jen. I don't think Bill did anything wrong. Again, just for clarity, it's not that he doesn't think that it didn't happen. He just thinks that what he did wasn't wrong. Which is not a surprise when you realize, of course, that you're talking about Donald Trump, as filthy and disgusting a person as he is. Anyway, as I mentioned, I'll be off the air live tomorrow, but we will be with you for a pre-tape show. I'll share that with Justice shortly. A fantastic long read dive into the world of connections between the Mercers and Stephen Bannon. This is stuff that has to be on record. It's a Good Friday show, except it's not Good Friday. I hope you'll enjoy it, and we'll see you again next week, probably on Monday, another pre-recorded show if I can get that together. What's coming up next? On the Thursday, thank God it's Joe Vidi version of the after show. A right-wing super PAC makes a desperate attempt to link the top Democratic candidate for Tom Price's old seat to Osama bin Laden. They love doing that in Georgia. A right-wing megadonor paid indicted ex-Congressman Steve Stockman $450,000 to spread fake news across Texas. And a little more, I'll tell you after
From
this.
Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
This sounds like a good scam. Revenue-hungry cities mess with their traffic lights in order to write more tickets. And, of course, make driving more dangerous in the process. On the last half, they'll be talking again with Angela Marks, Angie in Washington State, on Twitter, for discussion on saber rattling in the China Sea and much, much more. Next on the After Show.